All right, guys, we're moving on to the next lesson in topic 7, which is combining like terms. These will be your notes, and then you'll start with the activity after you get your notes checked. So let's go ahead and first start with the definition. You might not know what a like term is or like terms, but like terms are terms that have the same variable raised by the same power. If they don't have the same power, then they're not like terms. If they don't have the exact same variable or variables, then they're not like terms either. So we're going to identify the like terms in the following expressions using different colors and or shapes. Okay, so for the very first one, you have 9r minus 16m minus 3r plus 4m. Okay, when you do this, you can rewrite all of your subtraction as addition if you want to help you with your signs, or you can just bring the sign that's right before it with it. So I'll show you both ways. Okay, the first way, if we rewrite it, it would be 9r plus negative 16m plus negative 3r plus 4m. Okay, and then if we were to go ahead and combine like terms, the ones that would be like are 9r can go with negative 3r. And then the next like term, if I just move down the line, would be negative 16m can go with 4m. So the first ones both have r, so that's why they're like terms. And then the second one both have m's, and that's why they're like terms. Sometimes there will be variables or terms that don't have anything that are alike and will stand alone. And you might see that in the future as well. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. If I were to do it this time where I don't change it to an addition problem, but I just bring the sign with it, I'm going to show you what that means. And this time I'll only use shapes. Okay, so for the very first term, it has 13xm. So I'll put a square around that one, and I'm looking to see which term can combine with that one. So I'm looking for an x and a y. I think I said xm at first, but it's 13xy. And if I look, the 5 has a y and an x. It's the same thing, just a different order. So those two are like terms because they have the same variables. And if I look in front of that 5yx is a negative, so that negative needs to come with it. Okay, this is what you can do instead of rewriting it as an addition problem. All right, and then if you look, the 2 is the next term, and it doesn't have a variable, which means it's a constant. It's constantly alone, and it is its own term because nothing can combine with it because everything else has a variable with it. And then 7x is next, and nothing can combine with 7x, which is why I put a different shape. So the first 13xy and negative 5yx can combine, 2 cannot combine with anything, and 7x cannot combine with anything. All right, and then let's go to the last one. This is where you're going to see some of the powers and stuff too. All right, so let's start with 14y. 14y can combine with the negative y because those just have the y, so those are by themselves. If I look at the next term, my next term is 7y squared, and I don't see anything else that has y squared, so that is going to be by itself. The next one is 10. The other constant that I see, or the number that's by itself, is negative 5. Remember, I'm bringing the sign with it. Or you can rewrite it as an addition problem, and it would be plus negative 5. So those two can go together. And then the last thing that doesn't have one is positive 3x squared, and nothing else has x squared. So that is by itself also. Now you might think that the y squared and the x squared, since they have the same power, they're like terms, but they're not. Their variables are different. So remember, the variables have to be the same along with the power. All right, so let's go ahead and move down here to the bottom. It says combining like terms. We can add and subtract expressions by combining like terms also. Okay, when we do that. So I guess I should probably put like terms in there. Like terms. It says follow order of operations. This might mean that you have to distribute first. Okay, and always include the sign in front if you're not going to change it to an addition problem. So always include the sign in front. And remember, sometimes mathematicians can be really lazy and they'll just put the sign, and that just really means -1 if it's in front of the parentheses. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second too. Okay, so we're going to simplify the expressions below. In number 1, I'm going to do this one where I rewrite it as an addition problem. If you want to do that too, you can, or if you want to take the sign in front, you can do that also. So for this first one, I'm going to rewrite it as 9a plus 13 plus -3a. So notice how I switch the signs, plus -15. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. So when I combine like terms with this one, I know that 9a can go with -3a. And then when I combine like terms, 13 is a constant and it can go with -15. So this is where your topic 4 is going to come in handy when you're answering these questions. So 9a and -3a, do they have the same sign or different signs? Since they have different signs, one's a positive and one's a negative, we're going to subtract. So 9a take away 3a is 6a. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my other two that are like. So I have a positive 13 and a -15. They have different signs, so that means I have to subtract. So 15 minus 13 is 2, and you take the sign of the bigger number. Well, the bigger number is 15, and the 15 is a negative, so that's going to be a -2. Okay, you could also write it as 6a plus -2, and it would be the same thing. But this is the most preferred way since we don't have two signs right next to each other. Okay? If you look at number 2 has the distributive property because there's that negative sign in front, or as I told you before, if it's just a negative sign, it also means -1. So it looks like it has it in both of those, so I'm going to distribute the negative to both of them. So when I do this, let's just start with the first one. So -1 times 6y is -6y, plus then -1 times 15 is -15. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. -1 times 4 is -4, so I'm going to put plus -4, or you could put -4, either one. And then I have that minus sign there. And it says -1 times 8y is -8y. Okay, and then if you want to switch this to plus, because I always like the addition problem, if you're switching that to plus, then this becomes a positive 8y. Okay, so now that we have a problem, we're going to combine like terms. All right, so I'm going to start with my -6y and see what can combine with it, and I see the positive 8y. I guess I should have used the same shape. So -6y and positive 8y can combine, and then if I look, my constant is -15, and -4 can combine with your -15. So when I go ahead to combine like terms, I now use my topic 4 to help me out. So when I do my y's, do they have the same sign or different signs? They're different signs. So when they're different, that means that I have to subtract. So 8y minus 6y becomes 2y, and it's positive because the 8 is bigger. And then I'm looking at -15 and -4. They have the same sign, so we add. So that's going to be -19 because you just keep the sign of the bigger number. Okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and move down to the next two. We'll put the third one on there too so you guys can see. All right, and this time we have the distributive property, but there is actually a number in front, which means it's a half. So a half is going to be distributed to everything inside the parentheses, and it's just inside the parentheses, not to the rest of it. Okay, so if I distribute that half to everything inside the parentheses, half of 16m becomes 8m, plus half of 9 is 4.5. And then I have -12 and -6m. So this time I'm going to do it where I just bring the sign in front of it with me. Okay, so 8m, let's see what it can combine with. 8m can go with your -6m. All right, and then 4.5, the constant, can go with that negative 12 because both of those do not have the variable. When I combine like terms, 8m and negative 6m, they have different signs, so you subtract. That becomes 2m, and it's a positive 2 because the 8 is bigger and it's positive. And then I have my positive 4.5 and my negative 12. They have different signs, so I subtract, and that's going to be negative 7.5, and it's negative because the 12 is bigger and it's a negative. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The next one has a negative 2 in front and a negative in front of the second set of parentheses. So when I distribute, I have to distribute to both. And it looks like I have to do negative 2 times 3x. So that becomes 6x. And then if you want, you can rewrite this as plus negative 4 to help you out. Or you can just bring down the subtraction sign and just go ahead and multiply your negative 2 to your 4. So I'll just bring down my subtraction sign and do negative 2 times 4, which is negative 8. And then I can switch that later. And then I'm going to distribute my negative 1 on the outside of my next set of parentheses. So the negative 1 times 5x is negative 5x. Plus, because I'm bringing down my plus sign, and then I have negative 1 times 4x squared, which becomes negative 4x squared. Okay, and then I'm going to switch this to an addition problem, so this becomes a positive 8. And then if you want to switch this to plus negative 5, you can do that too. And we're going to go ahead and combine like terms. So 6x can combine with negative 5x. 8 cannot combine with anything, and my negative 4x squared cannot combine with anything. So the only math that I have to do is my 6x and my negative 5x. Actually, that's supposed to be a negative 6x because that negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. So when I do this, they have the same sign, so that means I add. So 6x plus 5x is going to be negative 11x because I keep the sign of the bigger number and they're both negative, so it's going to be a negative 11x. My 8 can't combine with anything, so I'm just going to bring it down and say plus 8. And my negative 4x can't combine with anything, so I'm just going to bring it down and say minus 4x or negative 4x squared, however you want to do it. Okay? The last one is more of a word problem with your expressions in it. And remember, when it has the expressions, you want to keep them together. So that's where your parentheses are going to come in hand. So it says a shopkeeper spends 7x plus $19. And I'm going to put that in parentheses because that's together on rent and electricity. It says if she spends 2x minus $7 on rent, how much does she spend on electricity? So if this 7x plus 19 was the total rent and the electricity, and this 2x minus 7 is just the rent, that means that I'm going to have to subtract these two to figure out what just the electricity is. And notice that I'm subtracting the whole expression, which means I'm going to have to distribute that negative to the second set of parentheses. So I'm going to keep my 7x plus 19 because that stays the same. There's nothing in front. I don't have to distribute anything. But the negative in front of the second set of parentheses is going to be distributed. So this becomes plus negative 2x. All right, and then I have minus right here, and then negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. So, oops, that looks like a 2. And then I'm going to switch this to plus positive 7 because it's easier for me to see it as an addition problem than a subtraction problem. And then I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, I'm going to say that the 7x can combine with the negative 2x, and then the 19 can combine with the positive 7. So if I combine these like terms, they have different signs, so I subtract, becomes 5x, and then 19 and 7 have like term or have the same sign, so that becomes plus 26. So then your final answer for that is 5x plus 26. And you can't combine 5x and 26 because 5 has the x and 26 doesn't. All right, that was a lot of information. I hope you understood that we can do combining like terms and the distributive property. You'll also see that we did a lot of topic 4 in this and topic 5. When we distribute, we had to multiply with signs too. So don't be afraid to hesitate and ask any questions on the notes or on the activity that you're about to do also. Okay.